Hello guys, Omni here. Season 2 of Titans started today with its first episode airing earlier this morning. I've watched it. I I wasn't the biggest fan of season 1. I had high hopes for this to continue and go somewhere better. Because a lot of shows really try in their first season to find out what they're going to be, what kind of show it's going to be. Even the cast is going to take a little while to get their footing in most cases. I can think of many great shows like Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, where the first season's not the strongest season in the bunch, at least as well as much as getting you involved and engaged. So I always like to give a show a fair shake and giving it a couple of seasons at least to see how things evolve and pan out from there. And season 2 starts off, I think, on a really good note. It honestly, in this one episode, answered all of my questions that I had about Dick and his story arc in season 1. And if you haven't watched this latest episode, the newest episode, the first episode of season 2, I would recommend tuning out and coming back because I don't think I can talk about this without getting into any spoilers. So tune out now. If you haven't watched it, come back when you have, just to kind of hear my opinion on it, if you care at all. But in just because the problem I had with Dick's arc in season 1 is that he was, out of all the characters, not all of them had a very clear, defined arc throughout the entire season. And Dick's always seemed to have been building towards something. But every time he had a chance to grow, mature, evolve, overcome it, or face it, he went backwards. The keen kind of example was when they willingly burned down and destroyed that asylum. And then it would cut back to all the things that he said about Bruce, the way he thought about Bruce, the way he would always talk about how Batman and living with Batman and living the life with Batman has had this negative effect on him. While the things everybody else said about Batman, mostly, from Dawn and the way that she talked about Bruce and the way Donna talked about Bruce, it didn't line up with Dick's story. And it made me really wonder, and especially with his dream cycle vision in the last episode of season 1, really kind of dug in deep onto his perception of Bruce Wayne and what he did to him, and it never added up. We were getting conflicting stories, and by all means, based on the circumstantial evidence, at least from other people's points of view, Dick was way more going down a much darker path than what we are led to assume that Bruce was doing. Even taking lives, and very much so, at least being stated in the real world outside of the dream, that Bruce has never crossed that line. So clearly Dick has already gone too far from where he was going. And it was never really addressed, and he wasn't putting any of that blame on himself. He was putting that blame somewhere else. And this episode addresses that when Rachel pulls him back from Trigon's corruption and he comes back from it. It seems like that experience and coming back from it, at least, I don't know if it's just kind of retroactive, kind of them taking to heart some criticisms about his character arc in the first season. I haven't seen too many people actually point it out or talk about it, other than myself complaining about that whole arc, him being the driving force of the show and being an inconsistent character throughout. They resolved all of that in this episode and explained it away, at least because I talked about in the reaction I had for the first official trailer that came out maybe like a week or two ago for this season. And I did talk about, I was like, I hope they explain either both sides of the story, or we come to realize that Dick was looking back on things through a negative lens, and it's not the truth of the story, that he was looking back at it more from his feelings rather than the actual truth of the event, or that his perception or the way he thought about certain events played out differently in his head because of his own emotional state. And that's essentially what it was, or that we were going to get a story from Bruce who told a different version of the story, and it's just their points of view weren't lining up. That's how Dick took it. And this episode ends with all of the Bruce Wayne scenes that we saw in the trailer are in this episode. And which makes me wonder if he's going to come up at all in the rest of the season. I would honestly think it very unlikely if we see Ian Glenn coming back, which, by the way, I've never seen him in a role where he's had to mask his accent, and he does terribly masking his accent. I mean, it's passable, but it's clear that an American accent is not his native voice. It definitely is very apparent that he's trying his best not to break into his English accent throughout all of his dialogue. But the heart to heart that him and Dick have in this, where they kind of lay out really just Dick lays out his issues, his trauma, and where he actually came in to play with it, and admits that he was thinking too much through his pain, or he was looking at everything Bruce did through the lens of his own personal pain, his own darkness he was still carrying from wanting that vengeance for his parents, not feeling satisfied for not being able to get the satisfaction or closure that he wanted or needed from the death of his family. And he was blaming Bruce for that. And he admits it was unfair. It was not, he appreciates as much as he thought Bruce did so many things bad for him in his life, that he does say that there's so many things that Bruce did that were good for him and that helped him. And then Bruce was doing the best he could and helped him and gave him something to focus on to kind of distract him from his own internal struggles, his own pain. And maybe that was what Dick needed. Maybe it wasn't, but in the end, he acknowledges that Bruce was doing everything he can, that none of this was Bruce's fault. He was blaming him for things that was out of control, which was out of his control and out of Bruce's control, and that wasn't fair to Bruce, and that's why he came back asking him for help with building and rebuilding this new version of the Titans and reintroducing this team to the world. And I love that. I'm glad at least that they acknowledged that, because it was such a lingering question throughout all of season 1 for me that I just could not buy Dick's motivations. I didn't understand them. I didn't understand what he was going through, or because none of it was making sense with the secondhand information that we're getting from other people that know Dick and know that he is currently not in the best state of mind. Both Donna and Dawn acknowledge that he's walking a path that doesn't make sense, that they're not used to, and Dawn was even scared of him at some points with how far he was going, that he was just losing himself to this frustration and anger that Bruce just unfortunately was not able to exercise from Dick Grayson's consciousness, from his heart, from his soul, until Rachel was able to do that by pulling him through this darkness that Trigon poured out. Now, I don't think everything in the show has still been executed great, but I think that this is a good acknowledgement, a good first step, and a good first impression that there's going to be more heart and I think more stronger character development going into the second season. I think this gives us a nice springboard to jump into where things can go from here. I'm really looking forward to that now, where I was just kind of like, well, I hope season 2 fixes some things. I think that this first episode did so much to kind of alleviate a lot of my doubts about this. Now, the production quality is still kind of iffy. Trigon looked pretty terrible, better than most of the CGI effects that were in season 1, of course, but this is honestly the worst version of Trigon that I can recall to memory. But it still played out nice. It was taken care of very quickly. But all in all, this episode, more so than being a season 1, the beginning of a new season, really felt like a prologue to season 2. And not this feels like this should have been the finale of season 1. But I understand they didn't have the castings. They didn't have Bruce set in stone. They didn't even know if they could use Bruce yet or show him on screen. I'm sure they didn't have the Deathstroke character cast at that point either. So there was a lot of things up in the air that I can understand them having to hold that off into season 2. So, I mean, all in all, thematically, it definitely does feel like the end of season 1, but they're listing it in season 2. So I'm really curious to see what happens in the next episode, what happens with the first true episode to season 2, and where they go from here. Them being in San Francisco, them starting up the new Titans is going to be really interesting. I was really hoping that in the pan out, they were going to have the giant T building. I know that would have been really ridiculous, really cheesy, really just absurd to put in this kind of gritty, kind of more realistic take on these characters. But I personally was just kind of, please, is this the T? Are we going to get the giant Titans tower? Nah, just a skyscraper in San Francisco. Still cool. I still like their dynamic building from here. I think season 2 is going to be a much more positive stepping off point for the series going from here. So I'm really curious to see how this all plays out. I'm curious to see where the future of this show goes from here. I can't wait to see the new characters come into play. And yeah, that was my thoughts on this. This one episode turned a lot of my frustrations with season 1 completely around. Because at least now I know what was going on in Dick Grayson's head. I can look back on season 1 with a foresight sense of knowledge of what we will learn and know that, all right, Dick's just not in the right set of mind here. He's misunderstanding his feelings. He's pushing off his frustrations on other people. And that's where this all comes from, and it's all rooted from. And that he admits it in the end, and it shows there was some growth. Whether or not he did this or achieved this on his own or through his team, he got the help he needed, and he's seeing things more clearly. And I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing the Dick Grayson that I actually know, the hopeful, strong, optimistic Dick Grayson that I know and love from the comics. That's what I'm looking for. And the showrunner said that they're not to count out. We may see him fly as Nightwing before season 2 is over, which is what I really want to see. Also, I would love to see him gearing up in a live action Nightwing suit. That would be really sweet. I would love to see it, and I hope we do. Anyway, guys, I've rambled on about this enough. I just wanted to let you guys know, who have followed the channel, who have known I've had some kind of distastefulness with season 1 of this show. I've talked high praise for Swamp Thing. I've talked high praise for Doom Patrol, but I always had a little bit of just kind of disgruntledness with season 1 of Titans that I wanted to let you guys know that I feel like I've got a lot of that taste washed out of my mouth. I've got a good taste in there now, and I'm looking forward to getting another bite out of season 2, and we're going to end with these food puns and comparisons here, and these metaphors. And I want to know your guys' thoughts. If you've watched episode 1 of season 2 of Titans, what did you guys think about how they wrapped it up? Did it feel like it should have been tacked on to season 1? Did it feel like the beginning of a fresh new season to you? Curious. What was your favorite part about this episode? Honestly, my favorite part was the conversation at the end between Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne. I love that bit. I love them coming together like a family unit, and like how they talk about Jason was pretty cool too and funny. So leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe to support the channel. If you disagree with me at all, let me know in the comments what you disagree with. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on it, and we can carry on the conversation after the video. Thank you guys for hanging out. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.